the storytelling component, even though it doesn't feel like it's completely overt and out there, I think in some ways it still is, because we have visual artists that make beautiful pictures with these symbols, from our culture, from our heritage, that indicate stories. And so those artists would research those stories, at length, maybe even for years before they create those pictures. Or they will carve a totem pole, and the figures that are on it will indicate the story that represents that lineage, that clan, that family, or the blend of the two families coming together, eagle and raven, because the opposite clans are meant to be together. With the lowest portion being the most honored position, because that person is said to be holding everybody else up. That's how strong they are. So when we read our totem poles, because we do, when we read our totem poles, we look to the bottom first to see who is the strongest one. And it's often the mother who's holding everyone up, or the grandmother, the nanny, who is holding everyone up, because the women are the center of our culture, the oldest women in each clan. And the hereditary chief has to act in deference to her. She will tell him how to conduct the clan business. She will tell him, guide him. It's not that she will be completely demanding, but she knows, because she's the oldest woman in the clan, how things are meant to operate. So this would be an oral story that would have been passed on to that chief, so that he would know, in order to be a good chief, he has to listen to his matriarch for that direction, for that guidance. My book, Raven's Feast, it came about in an interesting way. The publisher cold called me just out of the blue and said, I don't know how he got my name or number, and said, Kung Jaadee, I want to take one of your stories and make it into a book. And I thought it was a scam call. And I thought, I don't know who this bozo is, but I don't have time for scam calls. I'm just going to hang up on him, And he kept talking. I'm like, I think he's telling the truth. Why didn't I take notes? Oh my goodness, Kung Jaadee, you've just ruined it. You ruined it all. It turned out it was okay. He asked me to send him and the editor copies of my stories, so I quickly typed up 4. And they chose Raven's Feast. And I love Raven's Feast. I bring it to my shows, and I show it to the audience, and I let them know I'm not going to read it for you. You can easily do that on your own if you wish, but there's no pressure. And then I say, I'm going to tell you the story. And each time I tell it, it's not exactly the same. It's mostly the same, but it's not exactly the same according to what the audience needs. And so when I perform that story, I talk about how Raven, separate from the clan that I belong to, this is the Raven, the supernatural being who is our creator and also trickster, how he created our world from flying in the darkness. The flapping of his wings shaped our world, and he could see that the world was imperfect. So he made a promise to make it even better, and he put the land in the world where it needed to be. And then he put the fresh water around the world. And then he took everything that swims and put them into those waters. And then he put the crawlers onto the world and watched them crawl around. And then he put the four-leggeds in the world, and they moved where they wanted to be. And then he made the flyers. He put them into the air, and they flew around the world, and it made him so happy. And then he made all of the nations of two-leggeds, of humans in all the colors we're in today, and put everyone on the earth in the same place because he wanted everyone to live together. But those first humans, they thought they knew better, and they divided themselves into the 4 main nations, and they moved to the 4 directions on their own. So Yosh, Raven said, Hoot laga, it's all right. He went into their villages and towns and taught them how to be anga, dear people, and haralastis, good people. Taught them how to build their shelters and gather their food and prepare it, how to sing, how to dance, how to tell their stories, how to look after the old and the young. And then he moved to a place on Haida where he could be alone. And there he built his own na'iwans, his own big house made of cedar. He gathered some cheen, some fish, and he prepared it and ate it. He found fresh water and he drank it. He thought he'd rest for a very long time, but Ganu. No, it wasn't meant to be. The next day he got up and he gathered more materials and built another na'iwans beside his house, and then he built another, and then he said, why on earth am I building so many houses when I'm the only one here? I don't know. So he built and he built and built for 50 years. When he said to himself, Hudi gigang, I'm finished, and he walked all the way back to his house, where he ate his cheen and he drank his antl, and he asked himself a question, what am I feeling inside? I'm lonely. I'm lonely for the company of other humans. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Yes, I do. I'm going to have a laganat. I'll have a feast. I'll invite everyone to my feast. So he stood and he faced the east and he said, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. I forgot. I only have enough food for myself. And so he quickly set his fishing net. He got out his hunting spear and his berry baskets and his clam baskets and his seaweed baskets, and he gathered food and he hunted and he fished. And days and weeks and months and years passed. And when he was done, he said, laganak asketwe, I don't have any gifts for my guests. So he took his tools and went into the world, and he gathered tugid, he gathered red cedar bark, and he made dadzunge, hats, he made kigwe, baskets, he made capes and skirts and sleeping mats, he made drums and drumsticks, he carved paddles, canoes, totem poles, he made jewelry, he made regalia, he made drums and drumsticks. He took days and weeks and months and years. But when he was making his final gift, he smiled to himself and said, yes, laganak askatwe arawang, it is time for the feast. And he stood and he faced the east, and he stomped his foot and counted 4 times. Swanson, stung, Flonich, Stanson. And he looked to the eastern horizon, and he saw coming from this direction all the red-skinned peoples of our world, the indigenous speaking peoples of our world, wearing their traditional clothing and speaking their languages, traveling in their canoes, and he welcomed them to the territory. Dalanglusia Chuga, you are all welcome here. Dalangkenge andi hangelga, it's good to see you all. Dalangkatsketla uslang, you all look really good. Hashquihistalu wagen kawangusla, y'all come over here and then sit down. And then he turned to the south, and he did the same thing. He stomped his foot and he counted 4 times. And he looked to the southern horizon, and he saw coming from this direction all the yellow-skinned peoples of our world, all the Asian-speaking peoples of our world, speaking their languages, wearing their traditional clothing, traveling in their canoes, and he welcomed them to the territory. And then he got them to sit down, and then he turned to the west, and he stomped his foot and he counted 4 times again. And from this direction, he saw all the black-skinned people coming towards him, wearing their traditional clothing, speaking their languages, traveling in their canoes, and he welcomed them to the territory, and he got them to sit down. And then he turned to the north, and he stomped his foot and he counted 4 times, and he waited and watched and saw coming from this direction all the white-skinned peoples of our world, all the European-speaking peoples of our world, speaking their languages, wearing their traditional clothing, traveling in their canoes, and he welcomed them to the territory and called them to come and sit. After he introduced himself, the groups of people introduced themselves. They sang their songs and danced their dances. They told their stories. And then it was Laganak Askatwe Arawang. It was time for the feast, and they feasted as days and nights and weeks and months and years passed around them, they continued to feast together. And when it was when it was time for them to leave, he gave each guest a gift, or gifts, and sent them back to the 4 directions from where they had come from. We were all invited to Raven's Feast, you know. You were invited the day you were born. And every single human was born with a gift, or gifts, that we're meant to learn what those gifts are and practice them with our whole selves so we can all be a beacon of light, encouraging others to figure out what their gifts are. And the other part of the story is when I teach the audience to remember they have tens of thousands of ancestors who love them no matter what, who will always love them. And that's when I give them homework. And I tell them it's going to take them their whole lives to do it. And I won't get to check it unless I see them one day, but they're meant to hug themselves every day for as long as they live. And each day that they do this, they have to tell themselves, I love me. And they can only stop when they become ancient and they pass on into the next world. That's when I remind people that we're meant to love ourselves, what we look like, how tall we are, the age that we're at, because everyone is beautiful and perfect as they are. They always have been. They always will be. And these bodies we're walking around in, this is our true home. We take it with us everywhere. These bodies are miracles of life. They're quite capable of healing themselves. That's how smart our bodies are. But we're meant to love these things that we cannot change. Some things we can, and that's okay. Because when we love ourselves automatically, and it takes a long time, we make the world a better place. And a miracle happens. It's a true story. Dangti koyadang, I love you. And when I tell the audience, I say, Dalang di koyadang, I love you all. And then I ask the audience, do I know you? Do I know you all? And they say, no, you don't. I say, it's true, I don't. I ask, does it matter? And they say, no, it doesn't. I said, you're right, it does not matter. That's what happens when we love ourselves. We automatically love everyone else. And really, our world needs more love. Love is the most powerful force in our universe. This is how we put more love into the world. So then I challenge the audience to teach their families, to teach their friends about their tens of thousands of ancestors who love them no matter what, and to hug themselves every day and say, I love me for as long as they live. Because this is what the world needs right now.